Hello everyone, welcome back to another card combo show. Me, Chocobilly. Yes, I have a cold, let's move on. I am going to be looking at Mira from Opus 20 this week. She's a really cool card. I love both of her effects, but she's a 2k, 2CP, 5k lightning forward with the text, when an opponent's forward enters the field, you may pay 1 and discard 1 monster. When you do so, break that forward, and then you can put 1 monster into the break zone to play Mira onto the field dull. But you can only use this ability during your turn, and if Mira is in the break zone. But it can be done at any point during your turn, so during your attack phase, or your main phase 2, maybe your opponent breaks a Tama to play something on your turn, you can respond by playing Mira onto the field by breaking a monster, and then if the forward does enter through Tama's effects, then you can discard a monster and pay 1 to break it through Mira. So, Flan, first up. So, I actually really like this. You see Mira getting played a lot at the moment with water, which is understandable because water has the best monster synergy. However, there are a few different things out there which I like, and Flan is one of them. So, there are a total of 3 Flans that can be searched with this particular Flan. There is, I think it's like Opus 19 or 18. There is like an Opus, I'm going to say about 7 or 8 Earth Flan, and then there's obviously this Flan as well. But you can have this Flan on the field, and you can pay a nice, dull, search for one card named Flan and add it to your hand. So it's not restricted just to this particular Flan. You can search any of the 3 Flans at the moment. Now, obviously, it's name Flan, not job Flan. There are loads of job Flan monsters, but unfortunately, there aren't many name Flan monsters. Well, there's 3. So, at the very least, if you've got all of them in your deck and you've got this one on the field, that means you've got a potential search target of 8 cards. Now, if you're running that many monsters, well, that many Flans, sorry, just for this Flan and Mira, that's a bit much, I think, but still. So what it does mean, though, is that if you've got Mira on the field, your opponent plays a forward. Let's say you've got no hand, hypothetically, and your opponent plays a forward onto the field. That will trigger Mira's effect of when an opponent's forward enters the field. You may pay 1 and discard. So you respond to Mira's effect stacking by paying 1, dull Flan. Go get yourself a Flan. You can then discard Flan, pay a further 1 with Mira's effect, and then break said forward. Sid Randall. Now, this is an interesting one, but not probably for the reason you're thinking. Sid Randall has a really weird wording and ruling, but basically, opposing forwards entering the field will not trigger any auto abilities. This applies to their own abilities and abilities triggered by your opponent's forwards entering the field. Now, this applies to your forwards as well as your opponent's forwards. So, if you have Sid Randall on the field and Mira on the field, and your opponent plays a forward, Mira will not trigger. Because Sid Randall's text, again, it says, opposing forwards entering the field will not trigger any auto abilities. Abilities triggered by opponent's forwards entering their field. So, forward enters their field, it triggers Mira. It means literally any abilities triggered by it, yours or theirs, are not triggered. So be mindful of that. But these two do kind of synergize nicely. Excuse me. Because of the fact that obviously makes it unpalatable for your opponent to play forwards. They need to get rid of Sid Randall or Mira at first before they keep playing forwards, and they need the summons. So you could combo it with something like the Fiend, for example, to make it so that their first summon gets cancelled as well. You can make maybe an interesting kind of control variant. Chaos, Walker of the Wheel. So obviously you can cast Chaos, break a forward, unrestricted break, just choose a forward, break it, which is really nice. But your opponent can then play a forward onto the field. With Mira, it means that that forward comes in. Even if that forward comes in and say it's, I don't know, the demon and wipes your board, obviously you want to be careful of that, but if you've got lots of monsters, that shouldn't be too bad anyway. But they play the demon onto the field, discard a monster, pay 1, break that forward as well. So it means that for, playing Chaos Walker of the Wheel, and then 1 and a monster from your hand, you've broken 2 of your opponent's forwards, which isn't too bad. Obviously, your opponent will probably see that when you cast Chaos Walker of the Wheel. If that forward is put from the other break, your opponent may play 1 forward, so they don't have to play a set forward. So, but either way, if you casting Chaos Walker of the Wheel to kill that forward and your opponent doesn't want to play the forward because, Mira's on the field, that's even better, because it means that you've just paid 3 to kill anything, which isn't too bad. Zapped. So Zapped is also a monster in all situations. So you can put Zapped into the break zone to play Mira onto the field, and then when you put from field to the break zone, you get to search yourself a card named Ramu and add it to your hand as well. So you get a card to your hand and Zapped as in the break zone, and you've got Mira onto the field as well. Nice. Tonberry. Yeah, so obviously she can search both Mira and your Tonberries as well. Now remember, there's only one monster in the game called Tonberries. And that was in Opus 4 with this card. Why it doesn't just search Tonberry, I don't know why they were called Tonberries. I know it's linked to FFTCG, but, that's a bit limited, so kind of sucky. And there haven't, aside from the most recent Tonberry, which was my spoiler from Opus 19, I think, Yeah, there haven't been many good Tonberries anyway, so, you know, but either way, good to have it because it's an EX, get you this Mira, or just Tonberries if you want them as well. If you're running this Tombetty and this Mira, he probably wants to throw some Tonberries in as well, just to fill out the search targets. Cleon. So, when either player casts or summon, put Cleon into the break zone. If you do so, cancel summon's effect. When Cleon is put from the field to the break zone, draw one card. That final effect of the draw a card happens regardless of what you do. So, if you're putting Cleon into the break zone to play Mira into the field, you still get a card. Trapdoor. When Trapdoor is put from the field into the break zone, choose one for your opponent controls, but break it. So, yeah, pretty nice. Just get to break something else and bring Mira onto the field. Simple as, really. Flan. So, similar to the previous Flan that I talked about earlier, and this is one of the Flans that it can search as well, because it is name Flan. So when Flan is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for one card named Flan and add it to your hand. So that means you put this Flan into the break zone to play Mira onto the field. You also then get a Flan back to your hand. So again, if your opponent's trying to cheat something in and there's a stacked effect, say your opponent Tama's something, you can put Flan into the break zone to play Mira, go get yourself a Flan. When that forward enters, you then immediately can discard the Flan you got from this guy and pay one to break that forward. And again, this Flan and the first Flan I talked about from Opus 4 do work with each other as well, so they can keep on getting each other. Calbrainer, this is an old school combo that hasn't been talked about for a while, but Calbrainer, you have to pay an earth and 1 until the end of the turn. Calbrainer becomes a forward of 7,000 power, and when Calbrainer is put from the field into the break zone, return Calbrainer to the field dull. You can only use the ability once per turn. So it basically means if she dies when she's a forward, she can come back. So, you make Calbrainer a forward, you have to pay the 2, obviously. Maybe attack with her first or something like that. But either way, you put Calbrainer into the break zone to then play Mira onto the field, and then you get to play Calbrainer back onto the field dull, because that's part of her effect. The only caveat here is you have to have paid the 2, which isn't amazing, and she's also a 4-cost monster. That only is 7k, yeah, it's not amazing. This used to get run a lot with Kefka back in the day, but it ultimately is a way to keep on playing, or be able to keep on getting Mira back to the field. You just have to make sure you've got the CP to make the payment for Calbrainer. Kefka. So, dull. Choose one forward you control until it gains plus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. At the end of the turn, break it. Now, there are lots of monsters in the game, but there are also lots of very, very small monsters. Most of the most playable ones are anyway. So, being able to make it so that that small forward becomes a big forward, and maybe attack with it so your opponent doesn't want to block or anything like that, and then you put it into the break zone to then play Mira onto the field, because ultimately it would die at the end of the turn anyway through Kefka's effect. You've got things like the Water Drake. Is it Water Drake? Yeah, the one that draws you a card on entry. The Water 2CP monster. Either way, there are loads of monsters in the game at the moment where you pay one, make them into a forward. At the end of the turn, they then break anyway. Thunder Drake does that as well. But ultimately, it's just a nice way to be able to have something that's about to die, to put in the break zone, get Mira anyway. So, I mean, you can be in just, not even in Lightning, to be perfectly honest with you. You could just be in Earth Water, and then just put a monster in the break zone to play Mira onto the field. Rain. So, obviously, you put a monster into the break zone to play Mira onto the field. You can then play Rain to then, Rain, whatever, to then remove the monster from the break zone to then be able to give Mira haste, Rain haste, whatever. Mom Bomb. So, when Mom Bomb's put from the field into the break zone, deal 5,000 damage to all the forwards. So, not only are you getting to put a forward onto your field, you're also then dealing 5k to everything on your opponent's field, which maybe could combo with something like, I don't know, what's it called? Salamander. Or just a host of different board-wide effects that both lightning and fire has access to. Very old. So, this works also with, well, technically the Earth Mirror, but you've got this mirror, so no. But there's the Ice, Earth, Lycaicus as well, to be able to play a monster onto the field. So you put a monster into the break zone to play Mira, and then you play Very Old, or Lycaicus, or something like that, onto the field to then play the monster you just broke back onto the field. So it works really, really nicely with something like Typhon, because if you play Typhon onto the field, choose a forward, it gets put 4 cards under your opponent's deck, put it in the break zone, bring out Mira, play Very Old to bring Typhon back, choose another forward your opponent controls, put that 4 cards under the deck as well. Ravana, Savior of the Nath. So, when a character is put from the field into the break zone, activate Ravana, Savior of the Nath. So, obviously, you would do this in your attack phase. So, maybe you attack with Ravana, your opponent doesn't block, they take a point of damage. You then put a monster you control into the break zone to then play Mira onto the field to then activate Ravana, Savior of the Nath. And you can then attack another time with them. Just another way to be able to get a break off to be able to use or to have another attack with the Ravana. Also works nice, or Mira works nicely with Ravana because your opponent plays a forward on the field and you can break it. Ravana will then stand up as well. and this is the fun part. So when a forward is put from the field into the break zone during this turn, the cost required to cast your next forward is reduced by 5. It cannot become 0. This effect will trigger only once per turn. So yeah, nice and easy way to be able to just break something. I mean, the Lightning and Fire already had good ways of breaking your own forwards, but still, to be able to, obviously you have to have a monster that becomes a forward, but to be able to put a monster slash forward into the break zone to then get another forward anyway, and then be able to cast something for 5 CP less is really, really good. It's in the right elements as well with Lightning Fire, so for example, you could put, I don't know, Mom Bomb into the break zone, deal 5k to everything, bring Mira onto the field, with Arden there obviously as well, and then your next forward can be 5 CP less, sorry, so you play, I don't know, the Demon for 2, deal 8k to the same element, or 7k to the same job, whatever, and again, get a massive board wipe, so... yeah, so long as the monster is also a forward, that's the only caveat here, but most monsters that get played these days are forwards anyway, so could have one of the nice easy ones which you just pay 0 to make it into a forward, or you could have something, yeah, you know, you've got things like Tonberry or Echidna where you have to discard certain cards to be able to make them forwards, but either way, you get to play your next forward for -5, so not too shabby. And that's it, folks. That is Mira. There's obviously so many different things you can do with it as well. Oh, there was meant to be Urianger in there as well. There was the Water Lightning Urianger, because you can bounce something. And then bounce obviously is really nice because... I'll just go back onto the screen quickly. Obviously, Urianger is really nice because you get to play a monster of 2 or less onto the field, you then get to bounce your opponent's forwards. Bounce normally isn't great because of entry effects. However, if it then comes onto the field, you pay 1 to discard a monster to break it through Mira. Bounce immediately becomes a little bit better, at least anyway. But yeah, now we're done, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you in the next video.